Hello, everyone. It's Andrew from the Sports Take Lunch Break crew. I'm joined today alongside another of the STL Break gang, Greg Bussmann.
Hey, Andrew.
And two people we are very excited to introduce. If you've listened to the Sports Take Lunch Break podcast, you'll recognize this voice from the wonderful OE ads between segments. Emily Buerk, welcome.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And finally, we have Ellie Dixon. Ellie,
Hi.
Hello. These two lovely ladies will have their very own podcast, which you can look forward to at the start of 2020. Would you two like to let everyone know the name of that upcoming show and what people can expect?
So we're calling it essentially Emily and Ellie. So it's kind of a fun play on we're office essentials. And Ellie said she was kind of brainstorming around one day with her sister, and they kind of came up with that. And we thought it was great because both of our names are E's. It's kind of simple to the point. So just kind of planning to do some chit chat between us. We're kind of good at talking to each other, right? So office chit chat, fun stuff like that. See how that applies. So we're looking forward to it. It should
Very
be a good
cool.
time.
So that's early 2020, right?
That's the plan.
Yes.
Okay. Stay tuned for that. That's very exciting. Why are the four of us in the room today? That's a good question. What we've done is we've curated what we are calling the Office Essentials 2019 soundtrack to the workplace. It's the top 40 hits as created by the four of us in this room. We're all pretty big music buffs. What we'll be doing is we'll be sharing this on our Spotify playlist across all of our social media platforms once the episode goes live. So without further ado, let's kind of just jump on in and talk about what we picked and why. As we started off, I just want to ask around the room, do you have a favorite music genre that you tend to go to? Or maybe one that might surprise us as to you listening to something that doesn't seem like you necessarily?
I can go. So I think I tend to gravitate between two big ones. So I tend to be just, a top 40 type of person. I like listening what's on the radio, and it works for me. But I'm also a huge country fan. I try to attend a couple country concerts in the summer. I still listen to country now in the middle of December, even when a lot of the songs seem to be like summery type things. But I love country music. I don't know if I look like a type of person that listens to country music or not, but if you look at my list of songs as we go down, I have a couple on there from some country artists that I really liked. So that's a big one for me too.
How about you, Ellie?
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty much the same. I'm pretty pop and country focused, but I'll get a little alternative in there. My sister likes to send me songs, and she has a little broader music taste. So I like a little bit of everything, but I'd say mostly country and pop as well.
Is your sister older or younger?
Younger. But
Okay.
she goes to school in Savannah, the art school there, so she's exposed to a lot more than I am. So she has always loved alternative music, so she shows me some stuff that I
Okay.
like. But
Anything particular that comes to mind when you think about something she sent you liked?
you might have to catch me. I'll think about it.
Okay. Greg, how about you? What kind of genres do you tend to gravitate towards?
I'm more of an alternative rock sort of guy.
Okay.
Kind of the token dad rock.
I was just about to say you strike me as a dad rock type of guy.
Right.
But, I have teenage daughters, and on the surprising aspect, they've given me a conversant knowledge of K-pop, which is,
Interesting. K-pop. I can't picture Greg over here listening to K-pop.
I don't really, I listen to a lot of it, just not on my own.
But like if you're with them and they play it, you don't want to claw your eyes out or something.
Some of it's not bad.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Do you have a favorite K-pop band?
Their favorite is BTS, which is
like every
the
young
big
girl's
one.
favorite, right?
That's probably the one I'm most familiar with.
I can picture you at a K-pop concert right now.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
I would say for me, I probably don't look like it, but I'm a huge hip-hop fan. I also love EDM. So if you're not familiar with that, that's electronic dance music. I would say those are the two genres that people don't normally see 34-year-old white guy being really into, but I am, so guilty as charged. The next question I have for all of you is there a song or multiple songs this year that you felt were way overrated, overplayed, which is maybe why they aren't on our list or, still made our list even though they were overplayed?
And this kind of contradicts one of the songs that I picked because one of her songs is on my list, but I honestly think that Billie Eilish has kind of become a little bit overrated. The song I have, When the Party's Over by her on my list, and I think when that first came out, it was a little bit different and she had a different sound. And so for me, that really clicked. But then as she's put out more songs, I didn't quite like them, but everybody seemed to start getting obsessed with her. And I don't necessarily get the drive for her type of music as I've gotten to listen to more of her things. So for me, I think she was a little overrated, but that's just my personal opinion because I know everybody else seems to be obsessed with her. So I'm in the minority on that one.
She's actually the only artist that featured on all 4 of our lists. So
Notwithstanding, I tend to agree with Emily. I have a daughter that has been into her since, she was just a SoundCloud artist, and I know what that means.
Super trendy, Greg.
Yeah. So I'm kind of over it, but it's hard to deny kind of what she's done at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's different. She's obviously super talented. I mean, I listen to her sing a cappella in videos online or when she's doing a cover of somebody, and I think she has a fantastic voice. It's just her style and her sound aren't my cup of tea, but obviously she appeals to a ton of people. So
I like a little more of a structure to a song. She's kind of more...
it's all over the place a little.
Yeah, just one
it's not
thing.
It's not verse, chorus, chorus.
Right.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my preference.
Exactly, yeah, I agree.
She's almost more like style than substance
Yes.
to a degree, right? I mean, like she's clearly a good marketer. She knows how to
Yeah.
create an image and a style and a...
Yeah, she definitely has her own total
Aesthetic.
brand. Yeah.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Yeah, with daughters, Greg, I'm sure you have Billie Eilish lookalikes in the house every day.
I do. She does not like me to say it, but she does look like her.
Has she dyed her roots lime green yet and
No.
the tips of her hair black?
I asked her to do that just so I could compare how much she actually does look like her, but she won't.
That was a no-go, I see.
But I see the resemblance.
Okay. Well, 2 songs that did not make any of our top 40 lists, but I am going to include them in our playlist because I think they were both so big this year, and I'm going to mention them really quickly. The first one is Old Town Road, which was #1 on Billboard from April 13th to August 24th. So no denying how big that.
Oh, yeah.
No, but as soon as you asked us for the most overplayed song of the year, that was the
That was the
first
one.
thing
Yes,
I thought of.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'd agree, but I also really appreciate like the joke of it all. And I was in college when it was really at its peak and it was so fun. Like everyone was,
Right.
loving it, but it was overplayed. I mean,
It's kind of spawned a whole new genre. Like I feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of a thing now, like rap country.
Right. I feel like there's been that crossover where because I'm a big fan of the quote unquote new country, which is very kind of pop forward. I love Florida Georgia Line, and a lot of those artists are now played on the top 40 radio stations, but also country stations. And so I think it was really interesting, like you said, that someone's now crossing over more of a hip hop and rap type of feel with a country song. And I think that kind of thing it was cultivating. It sparked a huge cultural thing for months. So I think it just shows that if people are doing something different, like Billie Eilish, she's a totally different, her sound is different. It's going to resonate with people because it's not the same old, same old. So, yeah.
yeah. And now we've got, I think there's a Marshmello and Kane Brown
Oh, I love that song.
together, and
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Diplo and, who is it? Diplo and Morgan Wallen.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, right after Old Town Road, that's what happened. So.
yeah.
What did everyone think of Panini as
Oh,
a
I do not
follow-up?
like that song.
I kind of like it.
No.
I'm very anti-Panini.
Yeah.
But
Anti-Panini.
yeah,
Right.
I think it's fun. I don't think it's like a seriously great song, but
Right. It's catchy.
Yeah.
It's easy to sing along to it or
Yeah.
whatever. So,
Greg, I'm kind of getting a blank look. I feel like you might not be.
Somehow I've managed to avoid that.
Okay. we'll be sure to send you Panini so you can listen to it. The other song I wanted to mention is didn't necessarily come out in 2019, but Laura Branigan's Gloria, which came out in 1982, saw a huge revival this year when the St. Louis Blues made their deep run and ultimately won the Stanley Cup. So I felt it was only fitting that we include Gloria, which hopefully we've heard the last of, to be quite honest.
Yes.
But I think it served its purpose, but I think it's gotten
Yes.
overplayed to the point where it should just kind of go back into the vault.
yeah.
Agreed.
I think it
Yeah.
needs to stay with the 2019 St. Louis Blues, playoffs, and it needs to stay with that and only stay with that. Because if we keep doing it, it's going to lose it. It's like the rally squirrel when
Yeah.
the Cardinals were in the playoffs. It has to stay that one-time thing so that it stays special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, well, Another thing we want to talk about really quickly is the artist of the decade. It was recently announced that Taylor Swift won Artist of the Decade. Does everyone here have a Spotify playlist? I should first ask, or a Spotify account?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you all got the scroll at the top of your Spotify that identified your favorite songs for the year and so on and so forth. What was your personal artist of the decade in terms of what Spotify determined that you listen to the most?
I think for me, looking back, if I remember, it might have been Florida Georgia Line, honestly, because I think I didn't start listening to country all that long ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I think that was when they really started. That's when Cruise came out, their top song. And in doing research, Cruise was like the number 3 played most country song of the decade for Florida Georgia Line. So I think that's when they really started getting popular, and that's when I got into it. And like I said, their songs kind of cross over. It's not just like twangy country, which I'm not a huge fan of. So that's what it was for me, was good old Florida Georgia Line. So
Mine was Taylor Swift. So.
I had a feeling it was.
I'm right on the trend for that one, but I wasn't surprised. I've been a Taylor Swift fan since her first album, and I play into her big. So
Do you think she's got a chance to be the artist of the decade the next decade, or has she sort of seen her window of popularity
know.
close a little?
I guess I'll have to see what happens. I don't know if she's going on tour for this album, and so I wonder if that means she's trying to slow down. I've also heard that she might be thinking about getting into Broadway, so maybe she's kind of trying to slow down on the albums, which would definitely change that. I think anything she does, I'll like, so I'm very biased, but I don't know. I think I'd be surprised if she was the artist of the decade again. Like, I think someone's got to come back.
Well, and she's been having all the issues with her old, record label and all those things. And I don't know all the legal side or what's actually impeding her, because they're swearing that, she has rights to all of her songs, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sure that's having more of an impact potentially on her 2020 and years ahead music that we aren't even aware of. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see how that also affects her moving forward with her new music.
Greg, I saw you feverishly rushing to your Spotify account to find out what your answer was.
Yeah, and it's like a 10-year-old album too.
Oh.
If anybody is surprised by that, it's the Weaker Thans is my most played artist, and everybody in here is like, "Who are you talking about?" It's a now defunct Canadian pop rock band.
Can you say that name one more time?
Weaker Than,
Weaker
in one word.
Interesting. Yeah, never heard of them.
How many albums
they're
did they
good.
put out this decade? Just one?
I'd have to go back and look. Not this decade. I don't know. Maybe 0. It might have even been older than that. I was kind of surprised that was my top artist, actually.
Interesting.
I think I went through a kick.
What would you have suspected your top artist would be? I feel like I have a vague idea of what you listen to, but
Probably most people that know me would probably think it would be U2.
that would have been my guess. Yeah.
They're probably on there somewhere, but they've this was not probably their most active decade. If we're gonna,
Was this the decade that they put out that album that
On
went to
iPhone
everyone's
that we
phone?
couldn't, that we couldn't get rid of.
I believe so. The one that really pissed everybody off.
Which is a shame, because it was a really good album.
It actually was.
But no one wants them forced on you. It's like, here, you have to listen to this album now.
Well, I mean,
I didn't.
you could get
but
rid of it. Right,
It was
so-
such a fiasco to
Right.
remove it from your
It was like
phone,
people
though, I remember.
Googling, how do I get the
Yeah.
YouTube album off my iPhone,
Yeah, I can't sit here and defend that, but and they got paid like $300 million or something for
Oh,
it.
right.
So,
Makes sense for them.
but yeah, that's probably who I would consider for myself.
Okay.
My most listened to. But it's hard to argue with Taylor Swift, though. I mean, I'm not personally a fan, but it's hard to argue with her resume for the decade.
That's kind of my point, or my thoughts on it is I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. I have nothing against her. She's just not necessarily the music that I gravitate towards, but I can certainly appreciate what she's done and her greatness, and there's no denying the album sales and the
Right, exactly.
the streams she gets.
The popularity and just everything.
Sure, and she's empowering for women, and has a good message. And I will say, even though I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, her NPR Tiny Desk was kind of a revelation for somebody like me who's not a Taylor Swift fan. It was kind of a stripped down set, She did a really nice job on that one.
I agree. I actually saw that as well. She is talented too. So
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
And she's what, in her
I think
early
she just
30s,
turned
late
30.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean,
I was going to say like 18.
so she's definitely got a chance to be artist of the decade again if she keeps going. I was not surprised by my artist of the decade. I'm a huge Arctic Monkeys fan. They put out a couple albums this year, or this decade, AM and Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. They're kind of I think they were probably one of the more popular rock bands of the decade, sort of that British rock that kind of got a revival over the last 10 years. So Arctic Monkeys were my choice for artist of the decade. As we switch over, we're going to talk about songs and albums that have kind of stood the test of time for the decade. So as you think about it, are there any songs in specific or any albums over the course of the last 10 years that you still find yourself listening to or feel like they've held up just as well?
Oh, man.
I'll start if you want to think about it for a second.
Yeah.
I wrote down 3 different songs that for me, I still find myself listening to over and over again. One of them dates all the way back to 2010, and that's Rolling in the Deep by Adele.
Oh, yeah.
Adele had a monster decade.
Yes.
She put out so much good music.
Well, they were in there a couple years where she won like 5 and 6 Grammys a year or something insane. Yeah.
And every song on those albums was
They were great.
huge hit singles.
Yes.
Yeah, so I still find myself listening to a lot of her early stuff. 2014, Ed Sheeran, Thinking Out Loud, I think might be my favorite song of the decade. I don't know, I just really love that song. And then just last year, Childish Gambino put out This Is America, which we're still waiting for the album to come out, hopefully in
Right.
2020.
Right.
Between the video and the song, that was a very catchy
Yeah,
song
definitely.
that I think is going to hold up for a long time.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any songs that come to mind that?
Well, I have an album.
Yeah, okay.
I think it came out mid-decade, which was 21 Pilots, Blurry Face, which was start to finish a great album. I guess it's part of getting older for me, but I don't really remember what happened this decade or the previous decade.
Right.
But
Like if someone were to go back and say, this was the top song of 2012, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm sure. Okay. I
yeah.
still like that song.
I
But
trust you.
yeah.
But that was right in the middle of the decade, 2015, I believe. And they'd had a couple minor albums before that. And
It was the highest grossing rock album of the decade, too.
well, there you go. And it may be a down decade for rock. I know you were.
That will be a
Talking
question
about-
for me next to ask you.
But for me, that's a big one. I enjoyed it start to finish.
Yeah.
Thought it was pretty inventive, pretty different.
For another couple albums I wrote down were Kendrick Lamar put out Damn. He actually put out a couple albums in the decade that were really good.
Yeah.
And then Mac Miller, I thought had a pretty good decade. Unfortunately, he passed away, but Swimming was one that I wrote down. I really loved that album. He put it out kind of right before he passed away. And it's held up really well over the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
for me, those are albums that I've found myself listening to over and over.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say it's an album, because I don't think I ever really go on to Spotify or somewhere and stream an entire album usually anymore. I usually just, pick a few songs that I like and I add it to a playlist and it goes over. But one of the artists that keep, I think, resonating for me is Chainsmokers. Oh my gosh, their big song that came out, it was 2017, 2016. And I remember it because I was a senior in college, and it seemed like anytime I would do something social with my friends or we would go out or do anything, that song would come on and everybody would just stop and sing. And I still hear it now. For example, I went to a wedding on Friday and the band played that song and everybody still loves it. It still resonates with people. I don't feel like I'm tired of it at all. So I think a lot of their music is still very catchy and enjoyable to me. And then I don't have her on my list at all, but someone I'd like to kind of give honorable mention to for not only how many songs she put out in even the past year, but in the decade, is Ariana Grande. I remember, I think I was in like middle to late high school and her first album came out. And honest to God, I can't remember any of the songs off the top of my head, but I know when they come on, she just has catchy songs that you can listen to and sing along to, and you don't feel like it's old or you want to change the station all the time right away. So I kind of just want to give her a little honorable mention because I think she had a really good year, past couple years, even if she wasn't on my list. So
Did Thank You Next come out last year?
I think it was
Was that her most recent album?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that though. But I think, she had like 5 or 6 songs. There would be a time I'd listen to the radio on the way home from work and probably 3 or 4 of her songs would come on in one time because she had that many hits on the radio at once, which I think is pretty incredible because that doesn't happen very often to have that many hits at one time. So, yeah, I'm not sure on dates, but she did a good job, I think. So,
I just Googled it. It came out in October of 2018, so
Okay.
late
Okay.
last year.
I thought
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
It still feels very fresh to me.
Right,
Because
yeah.
she's always being played.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ellie, what about you? Any songs that,
I think, well, it was actually really hard for me to make my top 10 list of this year because I realized a lot of the songs that I've listened to all year didn't come out this year.
Yeah.
So my big
Had
one that
that
I
same
think of,
trouble.
it was hard. The one that I think of is "Stay a Little Longer" by Brothers Osborne. I think it's maybe one of the best country songs that I have found. I don't think I'll ever get sick of it, and I love it. It's got a really cool guitar solo, which I'm not even normally into, but every time it comes on, I live in Alton, and we've got the big river road, and I just want to drive down the river road. It's so cheesy, but I love it. And that song, I just Googled it too because I didn't know it released in 2014, and I know I didn't find it that long ago, but that's like my song that I wish I could have put it on my list, but I love that song. I don't think it'll ever get old.
I made a note of that because I don't listen to country music by a rule of thumb generally, but I do appreciate some country every now and then.
I do. I have a little list that if I run into someone who doesn't like country, that I could show you some songs.
Is that
I
on there?
think-
I
yes.
assume.
I think that's a good in between, like just a really good song.
Yeah. Good deal.
Like intro to
Yeah,
Intro to country. Yeah.
Well, I find myself listening to older. I probably differ from you, Emily, because I was raised on country, and I'm talking like Brooks and Dunn and Garth
Right.
Brooks and Reba McEntire and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think, I still love and appreciate Garth and even, Reba or Dolly or any of those kind of like groundbreaking country artists that I think everybody knows whether you like it or not. But I think even within the past 10 years, this wave of this new country movement has really kind of turned country on its head where people are saying, that's not country, that's pop, that doesn't sound like it. And I think country is one of those genres that it's kind of pulled from so many different backgrounds of music that it can kind of mold with what needs to happen or with what's being played in other genres at the time. So, I think if you're saying, you enjoy more pop music for general, that some of the newer country songs that have that feel could be a transition. I know that was my transition in. And then as you start listening to more, you kind of find your feel. Because like I said, I don't really like the old, really twangy, I'm not like Johnny Cash fan, or that's not my kind of sound. But I think it can play into so many different avenues for non-country fans as of right now. So
I think that's a good point. I think Shania was like the first one to kind of bridge the gap
Right,
between like
exactly.
traditional country and then becoming like a pop superstar. She
Right.
was much bigger than a country artist. Greg, I want to go to you. You sort of teased it a minute ago. I wrote down it was kind of a down year for rock music by and large in terms of like when you look at album sales and just big rock albums that came out this year. Would you agree with that, or do you think that's maybe a little misleading?
Well,
Because I love rock music, but I
Yeah.
felt like it was kind of a quiet year.
as I researched release dates mostly to figure out what qualified for my top 10, there was more rock than I thought initially. However, the top of the line, the biggest of the big rock bands were kind of quiet, I think, for the year. So I think it was out there. You had to maybe dig for it a little more this year than in years past.
who are you qualifying, Greg, as some of the big rock bands so I can get a perspective because I don't really follow rock all that much.
Andrew can jump into and help. I'd say maybe like the Foo Fighters,
Pearl Jam.
Pearl Jam,
Okay.
even
Arctic
U2,
Monkeys.
Arctic Monkeys, Radiohead.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because when I think of rock, I think of like the 80s rock bands I grew up listening to from my parents, so I don't really follow it.
Well, that's a good
Currently,
distinction,
but-
actually. I'm not really talking about heavy metal or hard rock. Maybe
Right.
like, because, Tool put out an album, which is rock. That's pretty big. That was long awaited.
Yeah, 13 years.
So there wasn't none, but, you know.
I've got a note of some artists that did put out albums: Bruce Springsteen, Cage the Elephant, Beck, Liam Gallagher. So there were some rock albums.
Noel Gallagher too.
Noel Gallagher, Black Keys, which we'll touch upon later. Nick
Yeah,
Cave
it was
and the Bad
out there
Seeds.
for sure, but maybe slightly down, I'd say. Just missing that very top of the line, Red Hot Chili Peppers, maybe.
Yeah, 21 Pilots.
Yeah, so
Okay, good to know for anybody that might be like me and doesn't follow it so much, to give some perspective, because I've heard of several and plenty of those people. So
It does feel like rock's like the fifth wheel though at this point, unfortunately, because pop's big, country's big, rap hip hop's big.
well, and you know, having young daughters,
right,
I'll try not to continuously refer to them, but you know, they're not really rock. They're more hip hop and K-pop and
yeah,
Taylor Swift, even, you know, more top 40, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, most of the big rock bands are like the Pearl Jams and the Foo Fighters, who are more dad rock at this point than like contemporary rock artists.
Yeah, that's never going to move their needle.
Yeah.
I don't think. So,
Okay, well, we're now just going to jump right into kind of discussing some of the songs that we have on our list. So I don't necessarily have like a structure for how to go about this. So
Yeah.
I would say just kind of jump in, and if you want to chat about some of the songs you picked and why you picked them, and you know, we can kind of discuss them from there. So anybody want to jump in with like, what was your number one song when you initially put your top 10 together? Like you had to have that one
Oh.
without a doubt. That was your one.
Truth Hurts by Lizzo. I think that's iconic. Like, I feel like she came out of, I know obviously, you know, she's building her own fan base, but for me, it's like she just came out of nowhere and just killed it. I mean, this, obviously, Ellie, you have it on your list too. It's just, everybody sings this song. Everybody gets so into it. And by everybody, I mean most females that I know, at least. I'm sure guys will just kind of like, you know, bob and weave and shake their head a little. But every female I know, it's not just like you kind of just quietly sing it. You're like yelling this song whenever it comes on. So for me, I feel like it just like tore the roof off the place when it came on. And it's still such a good song to me. It's just, it was that, you know, the girl empowerment song that came out that everybody, I think, got behind. And Ellie, I don't know if you have some, you know, more things to add, but
Well, this is a song, it's not an alternative one, but this is a song my sister showed me at the very beginning of 2019. I feel like one of those jerks who's like, I found that song first. Really, my sister did, but I was the one who brought it to my friends at school at the very beginning of our last semester of college, and I was like, guys, this is the song. And it became their song that they would play when they wanted me to get everybody kind of hyped up. So it really was like the song of 2019 for me. Now I'm kind of, I don't want to say it's getting overplayed because I really love it still, but
It's borderline.
almost there.
Yeah.
But I still think it just gets everybody going. So it really was one that maybe I wouldn't currently listen to on my like playlist right now, but I had to put it on there because it was the song for 2019.
I agree.
I feel like Lizzo's kind of reaching the end of like, I feel like she needs to put out a new album pretty soon because I have Juice on my list.
Yep.
I prefer that one to Truth Hurts.
Yeah.
I like them both quite a bit, but
yeah, I feel like she came out with her first album and it's all these songs that just like pump you up and get you going. And now it's like, I'm on the same page as you, Andrew. I want to see like, what is she going to do next? Is her next album going to play on some different strengths that she has rather than just, I mean, because these songs are all very like beat heavy and, you know, like just saying her experiences with whatever obviously is going on in her life, but what else can she do? So I'm really curious to see how does she move into 2020 with as big of a 2019 year that she had, you know?
yep.
So
she'll actually be on SNL this Saturday.
I know, I'm stoked.
So I'm very excited to see what she does. Hopefully she does something outside of the box and she doesn't just play Truth
Play a new
Hurts and-
song or
yeah.
play some, or, you know, because I'll see people, they'll go on SNL and they'll have their popular song, but they sing it acoustically or they sing it in a different way or put a spin on it. So I'd love to see if she does that and takes one of these iconic songs and kind of puts a different spin on it for people to see, you know?
Billie Eilish did that.
She did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Greg, since you didn't pick a Lizzo song, you're the only one of us who didn't. Did you have a song that was like the first one you put on there that it had to go on?
Well, speaking of Billie Eilish, I put Bad Guy on there just because I thought kind of a nod to kind of like Taylor Swift being the artist of the decade, not based on my preference, just kind of having a little respect for the accomplishment. Same thing with Bad Guy, which so far is probably to me, my favorite song off Billie Eilish's album, which I have not heard every track off of, but the ones I've heard, including the ones you guys picked, it's definitely more Bad Guy's more my speed.
Same here. We both picked Bad Guy, and Emily and Ellie, you both picked When the Party's Over.
Yep.
And the two songs are I think they're drastically different in terms of
Yes.
like
Yeah.
style and tone and everything. So it's not surprising that Greg and I would go in the same direction, and then the two of you maybe in the other direction. But
Yeah. I mean, I think like what we were saying, where I'd love to see something different from Lizzo. I think then, like I said, she might not be my favorite artist, but I can give her props when it's due. And I think Billie Eilish is very good at using different strengths that she has and doing different production styles and the sound of her voice and the tones and everything. So again, I'm going to give her props for, like you said, two drastically different songs on the exact same album, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
for me, the song that I put on first on my list, and it's my favorite song of 2019, is Mr. Post Malone and Wow.
That's a good one. That was on my list too.
Yes. I actually had trouble picking a song from Hollywood's Bleeding because there's like 8 or 9 singles on there.
Yep.
And the album's only been out like a couple of months.
I know.
And it's really good. I mean, I think Post Malone, if he had put out more music in this decade, probably could have been Artist of the Decade because he put out 3 albums in like the last 4 years.
I know.
And they've been really, really good albums.
Yeah.
So I think Wow, the bass line, the beat, everything about that song is just perfect for me. So
Yeah.
I love that song too. And this might surprise you coming from Miss Taylor Swift, Artist of the Decade, but Post Malone was my Artist of 2018.
Wow. Okay. Any
Yeah.
other song that you want to jump into really quickly that
I think I'd like to kind of touch on one of the songs I have was Beer Never Broke My Heart by Luke Combs. But I think in regards to any of my country listeners out there, Luke Combs had a huge year. I'm pretty sure he had 8 or 9 top singles just in this year alone, and probably even in the past couple months. He's got at least 3 on the radio that are playing actively right now. So I think in regards to country music, Luke Combs just kind of like Lizzo, this was a year where he put stuff out and it just resonated with people and resonated with fans. And I like his tone and I like his style. And I think all of his songs are very just catchy and easy to listen to and very much fit that kind of new country vibe that I resonate with. So I think he had a huge year. So that was a good song for me.
not knowing anything about country personally, I actually made a note that I loved that Luke Combs song, which I'd never heard up
Yeah.
until you putting it in our playlist.
Yep.
Would you say he's like one of the top male artists in contemporary country, or not necessarily? 'Cause again,
think-
I don't know who he is.
I think right now he's probably one of the biggest up and coming new artists that we've seen in a while. But I think in order for people to say like he's a big one, I think you have to have several consecutive years. I mean, and I think it's the same with any genre. You have to have several consecutive years of being a top performer to get that like people would say Luke Bryan. He's a top country guy because he's been doing it for a while. He's had several successful concert tours, all that stuff, I think Luke will get there. I have a gut feeling that he will. I think he just needs a few more years to really build up his resume for people to say like, yes, he can do that, because it takes a while for, someone to kind of gain such a strong fan base that you continue to get that title yourself. So, yeah.
I did also enjoy that song as I queued up our playlist.
And you don't particularly care for country like myself, do you?
No, I'm not one of those people that hates it, but it's not my thing. But
Like you don't actively seek out country music.
No. But I didn't, I hadn't heard it till we put our list together.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. So.
Yeah.
I find
Credit
that
where it's due.
the best country songs from somebody who's not necessarily a country fan are the ones where like the chorus hooks everyone and
Oh,
you're all like,
100%.
it doesn't matter if you're like at a family get together or whatever, everyone just shouts along to the song.
Yeah.
And I felt like that song was easily is
Yeah.
very catchy.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's going to jump into it right away.
A good hook is a good hook.
Right.
Right.
Regardless
Yeah.
of
Doesn't matter
genre.
No
genre.
denying it. Exactly.
Greg, I want to ask you about one of your picks because there's a little controversy to it that you might have to explain.
Okay.
And that would be, make sure I'm looking at this right, The Joy Formidable and the song Whirring.
Yeah.
So explain to me, number one, why there's a little controversy. And then,
Well, it's a 10-year-old song,
okay.
but it was reissued on a new album in 2019, or anniversary edition. the reissue is I don't know what I'm saying at this point. They reissued a iconic album from 10 years ago.
For someone who's listening who might not know who the Joy Formidable is, would you explain?
They're from Wales, Welsh, I guess that is, trio, led by a woman. Blanking out on her name right now. I don't know any of their names, but they're kind of a rock trio from Wales, and they just absolutely rock. And this is one of their probably best songs. And the fact that it was reissued in 2019 kind of let me give them a little bit of a nod.
Had you not listened to them in a while? It was like, this is something that got them back in your regular playlist?
It hadn't been too long. It hadn't been the whole, it hadn't been years, but yeah, I definitely, when it popped up, it was, a nice memory, and there, check them out. So I just looked at it as a chance to kind of sneak one on the list that give some credit where it's due.
Well, I think it made sense to go in there, so I don't.
Well, maybe.
I think you're safe to put it in there.
I figured I could get away with that one time.
Yes.
Maybe not all 10 songs.
Right.
But on one of my 10, I felt like it wasn't too much of a reach.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And the song rocks, so you should check it out.
I want to go to Ellie, actually. There was another song that I made a note of that I'd never heard before. I don't know how, because it seems like it's a really popular song, and that is Crash My Car. Again, had never heard it up until you put it on the playlist. I love it. It's unbelievable. So please explain to me a little more about Coin.
Yeah. Okay. I have heard of Coin before. I know they came to my college a few years ago and did a concert. We've got a big bar that people love to come do concerts at. So we've got a lot of big names come to Brick Street Bar and Grill. And a lot of times they go big. Like Sam Hunt, I know, came like 14 times before he went.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's huge.
So I went to every concert. However, I didn't go to Coin. And they're not country. They're, I would say, more alternative sounding. And I can't remember. This is kind of embarrassing. I can't remember if I found this song through the app TikTok or just came up on my Spotify recommended. But I love it. And I had a friend, when I found the song, I had a friend who was posting about it on her Instagram stories. So I was like, I know the name. I'll listen to it. And I love it. I think it's a real fun, catchy song. And I think that song added a few, like the recommended playlist on Spotify, added a few more to my 2019 playlist. I really like it. I don't really know much about the band at all, but
If all of their stuff sounds like that, I'm definitely on board, because I think it was a really catchy song. Cool original sound that you don't always hear from rock bands today.
Yeah, that one was a little bit out of my normal place. So I love that song. I still listen to it almost every day.
In looking at the list, are there any on someone else's top 10 that you maybe have an opinion one way or the other that you didn't know about beforehand?
Looking down the list here, there's one for you, Andrew, on your list that I hadn't heard, which is "Make It Better."
Yes.
Which is
Did you like it? Dislike it?
No, liked it very much. What is it, Anderson .Paak?
Anderson .Paak, yeah.
And featuring Smokey Robinson.
Yeah, never thought I'd see Smokey Robinson trending in 2019.
I listened to some of his most recent album, Anderson .Paak. That is, I don't know if that came out in 2019.
Ventura did.
Ventura,
Yeah.
Okay. But somehow I missed that, and seeing it on your list, I almost moved me to put it on mine, but
Wow.
I didn't ultimately. But it's very good.
Yeah, it's huge for the R&B and like kind of soul community. And if you're not familiar with Anderson .Paak, he originally he was the drummer for Macy Gray, I believe it was. So he got his start as like a studio drummer.
Such a good drummer, though.
Unbelievable drummer. Another good Tiny Desk if you're an NPR fan.
I'll have to check that out.
I would recommend it. Yeah, big Anderson .Paak fan. Any, Emily, that maybe stand out to you that?
I'm just thinking, I like that I'm looking at Greg's list and Coldplay is still on there. I think I have kind of a soft spot for Coldplay just because it's not like, I don't know, it's not super hard or, like you said, like heavier metal or heavy rock. I think their songs are just kind of like this flow to the style of the music and things that they have, that I think Coldplay is one of those artists, now that I think about it, that I tend to like a majority of their songs that come out. So
Yeah, speaking of good hooks, there's
100%.
and that kind of gets back to what you talked about at the beginning with rock being a down year. Some of mine were a nod to like Coldplay, Everyday Life. It's not their best song ever, but it's not bad. But it's kind of a nod to them, career achievement award.
Yeah,
almost,
they played
or-
one on SNL a few weekends ago, and I'm for some reason
I
totally.
think it was
Was it?
Everyday Life.
There was yes, it might have been, because you hear it live and I'm like, I still just really enjoy the sound of this. And it's kind of different even for typical Coldplay, I think, but it's still, got to me.
I'll do that. I don't know about you guys, but I like live versions better in almost every instance. So I'll go to like a YouTube and watch a song live more so than I'll just replay a album track over and over.
That is a great opinion, which I share.
Thank you.
What comes to mind is Led Zeppelin. Every Led Zeppelin live album is infinitely better to me. Our producer, Dan, in the room, disagrees with me on that opinion, but I'm going to state it anyway. I'd rather listen to Led Zeppelin live than a lot of their studio stuff.
And Everyday Life live, they haven't played it a whole lot live yet, but and that's a whole nother issue with their stance
Will
on
they tour?
touring.
Will they
Yeah.
tour?
Right.
Well, suddenly there's a few more dates than maybe they originally let on. But anyway, but I don't know. There's characteristics in the song come out that weren't there maybe on the album track.
Do you think, to a degree, like Coldplay's great stuff is so great that like every time Coldplay puts out an album, they have to live up to, Rush of Blood to the Head or, Speed of Sound. And like, I think Everyday Life's a really good song, but when I listen to it, I'm like comparing it to like the great stuff. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
hard
what
for
I
me.
was getting at. It's not their greatest song ever. I don't know how a lot of bands live with that. How's Lizzo going to do
Right.
it?
How do you
Yeah.
top
with
your
that,
next song
you know?
when you've had such a high? It's almost, I mean, and you look at any great artist, and I think that just shows what kind of a performer they are, is when they continue to have solid performances year after year. I think that's what you can use to look at and say, you know what, that's why they're such a great artist, is because they're able to continue to find work or write songs or perform ways that are different, keep them interesting and relevant, and not just trying to live off of this high point they had years ago,
That kind of makes me think of Taylor Swift and her decade, because I know she used to get a lot of flack for going away from her country roots and her first album. But now if you go through like the real fandom or whatever that follows Taylor Swift, every album is an era. And it's like the Lover era, the 1984, or if that was right,
89.
89. There we go. That each one is an era, and it has.
I like how Greg knows it, and he's
corrected me.
a self-professed not a Taylor Swift fan. So
Yeah,
You can only hide it so long. Greg.
right,
All right, you got me.
everybody likes her a little bit. You can't deny it.
right.
But no, but everything
not
is
to.
really an era, and so it's all Taylor Swift. But there's something different about each album that I think makes her able to keep not beating her old albums, but making them different and better.
Right. Well, and I don't think that you can give an artist a hard time over continually trying to grow and evolve as an artist, because, we can look at early works, I'm sure, of plenty of people and what they're currently doing, and I doubt they're all going to have the exact same sound, the exact same style that they became known for. But again, that's probably why they're still performing now versus when they came out, is because they're continuing to adapt and adjust or refine their sound to what they prefer or they like. And they're continuing to either draw in a new fan base or keep a current fan base because they're making themselves different and grow. And I think that's, like I said, what proves who the great artists are. And these people that maybe just have a one-hit wonder, where they can't continue to evolve on what got them there in the first place. So,
I think that's a good point,
Yeah.
Emily. And I think it dovetails with the point I was going to make, which is probably a whole nother discussion, but that is getting away from the era of the album, and it's more of a song-based culture now, where people are just releasing songs as they come to them instead of packaging them into an album.
right.
Yeah, I made a note when I was talking about albums. I said, maybe I've dated myself because artists don't put out albums the way they used to when I was growing up, necessarily. And,
Right. I think we're in a culture right now, at least music wise, where it's always about who is relevant and how do you continue to stay up to date on that. And if you are waiting so long, like I understand when, like Lady Gaga took almost, 2 years off and then she releases this album. There was a big hype behind that, but it was because she had so many successful years prior. But I think now with all of the streaming platforms, all of the artists that are out there, all of the genres of music, it's always about how do I stay relevant? And to do that, you need to continually release new content rather than waiting a year and a half before people get new content from you because they're going to get bored and go to someone else. So I think now it's about how do I stream? How do I put out a single? How do I stay relevant versus I'm going to take 2 years and develop this really great album, but will you be popular in that time? I don't know.
And I think it's the artist taking power back because I feel like when you had like a record contract, you were obligated to like churn out so many songs in a certain period of time.
Right.
And one of the bands I have on my list, Tame Impala, it's basically just one guy from Australia who makes music, and he put out 3 different singles this year. He has an album coming out next year, but he just figured why wait? Just he has control of his music solely, so he can just put out one at a time if he wants to and stay in the conversation.
Well, that's the same playbook as my favorite discovery of 2019,
which is
Will Dorado on this list. Their song Surefire is the only one they technically released in 2019, but they've got, 2018 would have been if we were doing this in 2018 would have been a bigger year for them, but they, hands down favorite band I discovered this year for me.
And didn't you say they don't actually have an LP? They've never released a studio album?
Never released an LP. It's just a series of EPs and singles and
Well, isn't that how, didn't like Chance the Rapper become popular because he was releasing singles in his music on a third-party platform and people just catch on and get popular? He didn't even have a record label, and I'm not even a big Chance the Rapper fan, but it just shows that these artists are, it's a secret, just like you and Taylor Swift, Greg. It's just showing that these artists are capitalizing on all these streaming platforms that are out there now to reach their fans, and they're able to, release their music without necessarily, like we said, having to do an album, or you can release songs on your album, but you don't have to wait till a release date to show it. So, yeah.
Before we sign off, just as a quick glance across, are there any other songs on your list that you want to give a quick shout out to or feel like deserve a little moment in the sun?
I just want to say honorable mention to the iconic return of the Jonas Brothers. Can we talk about a bigger, when I remember it happened and at the same time they released their documentary on Amazon. So naturally I went and I watched that. And then you go and you see, of course I did, this is 2006 Emily living her best life right now. So, I think it's pretty iconic that they were quiet and then out of nowhere, it's like the Jonas Brothers are coming back and everybody lost their mind because, they were such a definitive group for people like me, for us millennials that, grew up with them as our pop band.
The camp rock generation.
Yes. No, but for real, you grew up watching Disney Channel and then you see this up and coming band and that's all you see on TV and they release all this music and it was just part of, at the time, it was part of our cultural identity was the Jonas Brothers, which,
Next year will be the year of Demi Lovato, right?
Well, she's still popular, but she just hasn't, she's had her whole issue with the.
She'll be coming back next year, probably.
She
prediction.
For me, I think she's already a great artist. So whatever she comes out with, I typically like. So.
No, she is pretty good. I'm just.
Yeah.
Having a little fun with it.
Well, it's like if Miley Cyrus came back out with a Hannah Montana Miley Cyrus crossover album, like she did in 2007. I would freak out, So
I would freak out.
This is 14-year-old Emily, 12-year-old Emily, just having a moment. So shout out to the Jonas Brothers, iconic return. Thank you very much.
No, yeah. I'm right there with
you. It was a good year for comebacks.
Yes, I agree.
Alanis Morissette's coming back.
Yeah.
Well,
that's got the.
That's.
Next year, yeah, but it's coming back. Yeah. Maybe we'll get a One Direction reunion some point down the road. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
No, speaking of shout outs and One Direction, I feel like I have to give a shout out to Harry Styles. He just released his album on the 13th. And the only reason I feel like people who know me probably think I'm like sinning right now, not putting him on my top 10. But I really truly believe he will be my artist of 2020 because it's coming out so late. All the songs on his album are great. I love them all, although he can do no wrong for me. So I love it. I've listened to it. I was sick last week, so I just listened to it on repeat while I was sleeping. So I love it. So.
I know it's only been out 4 days. Do you have a favorite track early on?
It's tough.
she
This
does.
is what I'll do. I did it with Taylor Swift. I will pick like 4 that I love at first, and then I'll slowly whittle it down to my favorite. But right now, I really love Golden, which I think is the first one on his track or on his album. Out of the singles that he put out, I think I like Adore You the best. But I really like I don't know. I could go on and on. I love them all.
Quick around the room. You got 5 seconds. Favorite One Direction member?
Well, also Harry Styles.
Harry?
I think I'm going to say Zayn.
Zayn. And I'm going to say Niall. I love Niall. So, Dan, how about you over there?
No love for
Dan's throwing his arms up like, I have no clue what you're talking
No
about.
love for Louis.
no
Right.
love for Louis Tomlinson. I
He's
guess.
got an album coming out end of January, Louis does.
He's
Okay.
coming to St. Louis pretty soon, I think.
Wow.
So is Harry, as you probably
Oh, yeah.
know.
you have tickets
the-
already, right?
No, I'm actually watching the prices. They're really expensive.
Right.
But I'm going, so I'll be there. But just to be determined where I'm sitting.
I don't see the reunion happening.
I don't either.
No.
I don't think
Certainly
so.
not with Zayn or anything.
Not in 2020.
No, not anytime
Maybe
soon. Let's be real.
Much further down the line.
Yes.
I do think there's been some tension between maybe Liam Payne and Harry Styles. He's been saying some controversial things, so I'd be really surprised if they came back. And I don't think Zayn would even be
No.
in the conversation. No.
I don't think Harry needs them right now. I think he's
No.
doing, I mean, they're all doing pretty well. But,
Yeah.
I think he's the Justin Timberlake of One Direction, if I were to give a
good-
name to it.
It's a really good.
it's a great comparison.
You know, it's not like anybody else in NSYNC wasn't talented or hasn't been able to do things else or, elsewhere, but there was obviously a standout. And I think Harry Styles is the Justin Timberlake of One Direction.
It will come to the point where people will forget he was in One Direction. He'll be such a
He'll be
big like,
associated.
solo
Mhm. Right.
star. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I will say, though, I think Niall is, like, really doing great compared, having to compare yourself to Harry Styles. I
Right.
think Niall's solo
Yeah,
career is
yeah,
I,
very
I think
Yeah. SNL
Flicker is one of my
co-op, too.
favorite albums. I love
It's great.
Flicker.
I love everything that he's put out as well. But I just something about him. I just love him.
You said Niall's going to be on SNL?
He was last weekend. Mhm.
Oh,
he,
I missed
he did
that.
a great job. He did a very good job.
We've called out to SNL about 5 times.
Yeah. Well, they tend to have they got Eddie Murphy hosting this weekend,
Yeah,
too, by the
with,
way. Can't
Lizzo.
wait. Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one.
Greg, do you want
So-
to shout out to anything?
Yeah, I'd like to once again urge everyone to check out Will Dorado. Talk about hooks. They got hooks for days. Country. They're a little twangy, a little rocky, kind of up and coming. So that, and then going back in time to the old days with a bit of a older act is Tegan and Sarah. That whole album's pretty good. That song "I'll Be Back Someday" is really catchy. They went and recorded an album of songs they had written in high school, and that's
Wow.
what this album came from, because they're much past that now, much
Right.
like me. But that's a really good album. So those would be the 2 big highlights for me.
I want to ask you about you have a Black Keys song on your list, Breaking Down.
Yeah.
Big fan of that album, Let's Rock. But I was kind of going down. I've got Low High, Eagle Birds, Go, Shine a Light, Tell Me Lies. Like Breaking Down's probably my 6th favorite song on the album. I'm curious why you picked that one over a lot of really good songs.
I liked it. Music hits everybody differently, I guess. It was one of my more favorite tracks.
Do you
on
like the entire album?
most of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not their strongest. Ever.
Well, it's not Brothers, but
It like rock on tours and Catfish in the Bottom, and everybody on my list basically had an okay album, but not their best ever.
yeah, I almost picked that the Catfish song, Long Shot.
Yeah, I don't think it's as good as anything off their previous album, but
Yeah.
still good.
Well, the hip hop EDM side of me wants to shout out a couple real quick. SOS by VC, featuring Aloe Black. VC passed away last year. He took his life, and he unfortunately had an album come out posthumously. Incredible album, really good stuff. And then J. Cole, who's one of the top hip hop artists out right now, put out an album and had Middle Child, which is one of my favorite tracks. Warning, there is some explicit lyrics in there, so be careful where you're listening at work. Any others anybody wants to talk about?
I think for me, I think Selena Gomez, her song that I have on there, Lose You to Love Me, that came out pretty late this year. So I was debating whether I put it on there or not because, it's not like it's been out since February. But I think for a lot of people, if you're like me and you follow pop culture and you understand who it's written about and, what it means, I think it's kind of like a good, almost a slap in the face to Justin Bieber because of what it's talking about. And if you understand the drama behind it, which of course I follow pop culture, like duh. I think it's kind of, it's like her responding back to the negative things that he said about her in their relationship. So I think it's almost kind of a good empowering moment for her where she can put it out there and move on and kind of wipe away that chapter. Plus I also just think it's a really good song. So if you haven't listened to it, go check that one out.
I think it's a really beautiful song, and
Yes.
I think it's a very classy slap in the face. Like, it's
I agree.
the classiest way you could come back to,
What's been said about her and
Right.
stuff. Yes, I agree. That's I think a better way to phrase it than how I said it, but
Do you think next year we'll be talking about 5 Seconds of Summer return, comparable to the Jonas Brothers this year?
I mean, I have several 5 Seconds of Summer songs on my.
Or did it come and go without registering as much?
I think depending on the type of music you listen to, I think 5 Seconds of Summer was maybe a bigger deal for my fiance, who's very into alternative and like Panic at the Disco and Blink 182 and that type of music, where I think for him, that kind of comeback, he was like, this is it. And so he was the one that showed me the songs with 5 Seconds of Summer in them. But
they just sound like Fall Out Boy all of a sudden.
no, exactly. It's like that kind of punk pop type of crossover. And, my fiance was he's very into that still, that type of music. So he saw they came back and was playing them in the car. And I'm like, this is fantastic. So, for me, I think that was a good comeback, but I still think Jonas Brothers had it more just because their fan base might be a little
more rapid.
either larger or more common or, what I'm starting to
Probably
say.
larger. Probably
possible.
is larger.
I'd say,
Right.
All right, well, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Your take on that.
Well, again, all of these songs will be up on Office Essentials Top 40 Spotify playlist.
When we drop the episode, we will have clear instructions on how to find that. We're playing with a couple different formats at this point, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
we will make sure we point you to the right direction. You can subscribe to the playlist in Spotify and work along with it.
Yep. We know everyone listens to music pretty much all day wherever they're working, so we hope you'll go over to our playlist and listen to it. That will do it for the episode. We'll see you again next week.
All right. Sounds good.
right.
Bye.